Paul, all set? All right, call to order the joint meeting between Smithfield Town Council and Municipal Building Review, April 26, 2023.
I don't think you said, is it on?
Do you want us to open and do the prayer and then you can open, or you want it to open now? Okay. Madam Clerk, can you start us with prayer and pledge, please? Thank you for bringing us together today in a spirit of generosity. May we honor one another by keeping an open mind. May we voice our truth and listen with an open heart. May we discern your will to unite in fruitful outcomes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Here.
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 Smithfield Municipal Building Review Task Force is called to order on April 26th, 6:05 p.m. Roll call, Paul Austin, Stephen Chamberlain. Here. Terry Bonioli.
Here.
And Barry. In the chairs.
That's that. All right, new business. A, discussion by council vote or other action on Smithfield Fire Department, Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency, RIEMA grant application with the town for purchase of generators at St. Paul and Providence Pike stations. Mr. Zwolenski and Mr. Osier.
Yeah. Well, the administrator's going to the podium, but Paul reached out on Friday. The administrator reached out on Friday and let me know that the fire department was seeking a total amount of $127,310.70 for the purchase of 2 generators, but there's a grant being out there right now through RIEMA that would require only a 10% match from the town. So the total town contribution would be $11,573.70. The application, I believe, is it been submitted or it's being submitted?
It's been submitted. Chief Chartier has submitted it. It looks promising. So we asked for a letter of support. There seemed to have been a timeline that they had wanted it to do it by last Friday. Chief checked into it, and we put it before council, so council would know what's going on. That'll be submitted with, if council approves of this grant, then I can submit the letter of support tomorrow to Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency.
Is there any paperwork, or is there anything that can be reviewed?
Yeah, I can hand you that. With the narrative that the council person just read from, I can give you a copy of that as well. This is it broken down. A point of interest as well. This current capital budget for the fire department, the chief put in for $63,490 for 1 generator at St. Paul Street. So in essence with this, with the 10% local fund matching from the town for $11,570, we would get 2. Both stations would have brand new generators, complete, online, hooked up.
So this $11,000 is coming from the capital budget?
Well, that's going to be up to council to decide how you want to pay.
But that's what the funds are in right now, the capital budget for generators?
No, the new budget, the chief's got $63,400. So let's call it $63,500. But we would have.
And the new budget coming up, you mean?
Yes. So, but for a point of clarity here, the town would have to pay the total amount, and then the check would come back to the town for $115,737.
Is there anything in any prior budgets for generators?
I believe, listening to the chief for the past 3 years, he's been submitting for a generator in the past 3 years.
And it just hasn't been approved?
It hasn't been
So,
approved.
so I know last year on the budget committee chairing it, I know that the fire department did come asking for generators. We had actually recommended that they had applied to RIEMA for a generator. And so I believe they've been down, as the administrator just said, they've been down this path for some years now. And it looks like they have a good opportunity to get not just the 1 that they've been looking for, but 2, which I think would be, we can all agree is a could be a public safety benefit, so.
If you remember, back during COVID, I remember the fire department got a bunch of money, and we asked them to pay for their own generators, and that was like $100,000. They wanted that in their budget, and we took that out of their budget, and we said, you should pay for that out of the COVID money that you guys got. So that was for 2 generators at the time, so that was $100,000 for 2, and now we're looking at $11,573 for 2?
That's correct.
Seems like a no-brainer.
So I will say, I told the administrators, I do support it. I think it's a great return on investment. They have been after generators for some time now, and the grant does look promising, so I think, I think it makes a lot of sense.
So do we know the size of these generators? Do we know, are they going to be able to, is this exactly what they're looking for?
Yes.
Or will they need ancillary, things?
No, they've had a professional contractor come in and look at it, measure the amount of wattage they would need. It's going to be, of course, like most generators, automatic on, wired, ready to go. Power goes off, it kicks on immediately.
And to dovetail on what the president said and Mr. Bjerregaard, so they've been asking for this for a while. Is there money in their budget to pay for that 11,000, or are you looking at the town to pick up the 11,000 because they have a budget line item for these generators in the past?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe they could pay that $11,000.
So I think what we're asking is, where would this funding come from? That's what we're asking.
Well, the funding, for the total amount would have to come from the town. Then the payback would come, $115,000 would come back to the town. I'm going to defer to the finance director on this. Tony, do you mind?
Could you get to the mic, please? Or do we have a mic for him to
I can
hold?
stop, so I can use this.
Right, yeah, maybe get, so he's sitting down. Thank you.
So the question is where the funds are going to come from, the 11,000. So as he said, we can either run it from capital and put it in the FY24 budget and expense for it, or we can, I'm not sure what they have for capital from previous years. I know with discussions with Sherry Ann that I know last year they didn't have much for capital. I was just now looking at it. I think they have, I want to say, judging from what they had spent up to period 9, they still have another 10,000 left. But I would want to get another update for that for fiscal year 23. I would obviously want to get another update on that to still see if they have funds left over. If they do, we can pull from that. If not, we can budget for it. But it's up to you guys, up to the council.
Do we know what the turnaround time is on this, on the decision?
As far as the conversation was, I think it was going to be awarded fiscal year 23, and then given, funded, and expensed in 24. I'm not sure. Anything outside of that, I'm not aware of.
So the funding would be in '24?
Correct.
So you're saying it's a reimbursement of the 115,737. So we have to come up with the 115,737 from somewhere, right?
Well,
Right.
that's going for the full.
For the full, right, full 115,737, right?
Yeah. So what we would do,
125, where is it? Next page. See what's going with the 125.
so what we would do is we would have a revenue and an expenditure. A revenue of the 115, and then the expenditure of the full 127. So that obviously we would upfront the cost, and then we would get the money back. There wouldn't be any impact to taxpayers.
Where are you getting the 127, just out of curiosity?
The 127 is the full cost for both, right?
It's the 115 plus the 11,000.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Because the
127,
90%
Okay,
Well-
thank you.
Yeah.
we'll reimburse on, we'll
Okay.
recoup.
And 10% on that
So the
funding award though, right? Just on the 115, right?
So the town's contribution is the 11,000 on the
Right.
total dollars.
Right.
So in comparison to the 63 that they were originally budgeting for, looks like a pretty good deal.
Looks like a great deal.
Yeah, I would just like to clarify that this is Chief Shadier's grant. He took the bull by the horns and wrote it. And it also, it emanated from Bobby Monaghan, who brought it to the chief's attention. So the kudos go to Bobby and to the chief for doing this.
Just a quick question, I think it's great. So has our EMA been involved at all in this? Because I know Peter Branconia is magic when it comes to writing grants and having availability. Does
Very,
anything
very
else we need?
proficient at writing grants, but not for these two generators.
Okay. So are you looking for a letter of support tonight?
No, actually, what I'm, just as information, that the letter of support, if you're in agreement, this is good for the town and first responders, I'll create that letter and send it tomorrow. It's actually drafted, it's ready to go.
Any other questions? Anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve, or authorize the administrator to write a letter of support for the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency grant application for the North Smithfield Fire Department and the purchase of 2 generators at St. Paul Street and Providence Pike stations.
And
Second that.
for discussion?
Yeah.
May we add something in there as to where the funding will come from? So that the finance director will check with the, the 23 and 24 budgets with the fire department? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Biragad.
Yes.
Ms. Hamilton.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Osier.
Yes.
Ms. Howard.
Yes. All right, we're going to move executive session down to the end of the agenda, so we go to old business. A, discussion by council vote or other action regarding design development for immediate repairs to the existing police station from Tecton Architects.
Madam President, both Rebecca Hopkins and Jeff McElroy is here from Tecton.
Can you use the mic, please? Just have her share it with you, because it's important stuff. Thank you.
We've been meeting for months now since we've met with you folks on this, to try to wrap it all up, and we believe we're at that point where we're ready for an RFP, to go out for an RFP. The recommendation of this board is that we go out with an RFP. We provided the council with all the information, the reports from Fuss and O'Neill, as well as the asbestos abatement report that needs to go to the Department of Health, which is, we won't submit that till we put out the RFP. You've also got the drawings that would be included in that RFP. Ms. Hopkins has been in consultation with the finance director on trying to get the front end of this ready. The whole body of the package is ready to go out to bid, and the front end, I guess, has still got a few little spots that need to be corrected, but we believe it's ready to get filled in. So I'll turn this over to Rebecca right now, and so she can update you maybe a little bit better.
Okay, so that's a quick question. I'm sorry. So the RFP you're talking about is for the repairs, not the new police station?
This is for the immediate repairs.
Okay.
And ironically, the administrator gave me a letter that he received this morning from the trust looking for an update on where we stand with these immediate repairs. So
Okay.
timing couldn't probably be better.
All right, thank you. So I will keep this brief because I think Paul really captured where we are currently. So as stated, we are ready to go out to bid with the immediate repairs to the police station. And the included scope is really built off of that initial trust letter. I think this is a slide we had shared previously, is once that letter was received based on the existing conditions assessment, we looked to incorporate, the task force looked to incorporate as many of those changes as possible. So we have kind of completed that documentation and that asbestos investigation, executing those immediate repairs. Again, to reiterate that these repairs do not address any of the interior improvements or programmatic needs of the department. It simply attempts to leverage the remaining budget to stabilize and secure the building envelope and to really focus in on the trust's concerns. So just kind of a high-level recap of that trust letter. So the trust letter stated number of concerns. They were significant repair to the building exterior, the windows, the exterior windows. The roof was estimated to be more than 30 years old in need of repair or replacement. The communications antenna was not properly secured or tethered to the building. Concrete walkways, stairs, and ramps leading to the building, as well as the interior of the building was in need of a complete renovation. So based on that letter, the task force went through the 30-day recommendation, and I think there was an additional longer day recommendation that listed either items that needed to be handled immediately and/or recommendations for inclusion. So the completed items to date, our structural engineer did go back out to the site, which I think we shared previously with the council, to determine that the building was structurally sound and suitable for its current use, but also to secure the area in the front of the building to prevent the likelihood of someone being injured by any falling debris, and to secure that antenna tower that was mentioned as a part of those stated concerns. Recommendations for inclusion. So developing a plan to renovate or replace the existing building. The renovation should include but not be limited to. So these were kind of the listed items and then reiterated in the email that Paul just referenced. So support and repair that masonry brick exterior wall, focusing on the front facade. It was mentioned in that letter that that was the area of the greatest concern, and is visibly the most apparent as that copper detailing has cracked and is kind of bowing away from the front of the facility, in front of that exterior construction. Also talked about all of the window openings and replacement of those windows. That is currently not included in the scope of these immediate repairs. Repair or replacement of the roof, including the roof membrane and or parapets. The repair of the roof is included within the scope of these repairs. Renovation of the interior of the building and bringing the building up to current building codes for the designated occupancy. That is also not included in the scope of these repairs.
Can I interject just a quick second
Absolutely.
before I forget? So if those are not being addressed, how will the trust respond? They've requested, and we're saying, no, we're not doing it. So just curious.
It's my understanding that they're looking for a progress report. I didn't have the initial discussion with them. The administrator, the Department of Public Works, and Mr. Nordstrom did have a discussion with them early on. It's not so much that we have to do these things. It's my understanding that they want us to see how we're addressing the issues as we go along. And ultimately, some of these things wouldn't be necessary if we get to the point that we actually put a bond question out there. They just want to know where we're looking to go with this. And so with a limited budget, we had to determine what we could look at and meet to try to secure the envelope of the building.
So we won't be penalized or have any issues related to our continued insurance of that building if those things aren't addressed that they recommended?
I can't answer that question for Mr. Weaver.
That would be a question. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No, it's fine.
So again, conveniently, I met with Brad and Colleen yesterday.
From the trust?
From the trust. We were just going over, they were kind of going over a few things of what I can understand and what they provide us for services. We had gotten off topic about the not demolition, sorry, the repairs that should be done to the police station. They had mentioned that we were at risk of being insured to that building if the repairs weren't done. We didn't get into specifics of what repairs did and didn't need to be done, but they did, one comment was made that we are at risk of being insured completely for that building. So.
Can I ask so that risk I just want to make sure I heard you. So the risk of being uninsured, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the risk of being uninsured for that building.
So I'm just seeing the letter that came out today, well, that was in front of me, and I know it says on the, I think this may be what Mr. Vadney is speaking to. It says 90-day recommendations to develop a plan to renovate or replace. So I guess I just want to know, anything that we're doing, is it going to include eventually renovating the interior of the building? Because that is a call out of an item, so.
I'm not sure exactly, because we didn't, like I said, we didn't get too in-depth with what they prefer. Well, I know that they prefer that we get a whole new building rather than repair it, but obviously I said that that's, you know, repairing is what we're doing. And that's what the town council has been discussing, and that's what we have plans to do. But we didn't get into specifics of what should and shouldn't be done. That's up to the inspector, like, as he had pointed out in the email, that they'll
Okay,
go
so
over.
I guess my question would be how we determine what we are or are not doing based on, like, who made that decision as to how to move forward? Is it a prioritization? Is it something that?
I'll let
Thank
Mr.
you.
Norseman answer that because he actually had a discussion with
Great, thank
Mr.
you.
Weaver.
Good evening. So back in June, the town administrator, Public Works Director, and I had a Zoom meeting with Mr. Weaver, and among other things, he was concerned about liabilities, not the fact that the interior was in a shambles or, you know, needed repair. He was strictly talking about the front of the building, trip and fall hazards, which is the sidewalk and door frames and that. And I'm trying to look at my notes. It indicated it didn't make sense to spend a lot of money, to use the money wisely, but concentrate on those issues. So what we did from that is we took all the items that were brought out in the letter. We did a matrix looking at how bad it was, how timely it needed to be done, and then we set the priorities and came up with a scope of work, and that's what we're working off of. So the other things in his letter are like, yeah, we know that, but what do you want us to do? And
Right.
he answered that question. And I got criticized in the past, but I take notes when I'm not talking. And he said, quote unquote, the building was beyond repair. That was his risk assessment determination. That wasn't an engineering analysis or anything, but that was his assessment.
But we've determined that it is structurally sound, correct? Okay.
With the repairs, yes.
Right, okay,
Because obviously,
right.
that's what we're trying to prevent. So, go ahead.
Let's be clear, the front wall, where we have delaminating brick, and we cannot see the extent of the damage,
Right.
the water damage is going in, we do not know if that entire wall is structurally sound. That's why the first step in the immediate repairs is to reinforce that wall with stud construction to hold up the floor
From
and
the
roof
inside,
framing.
Right, mhm.
And then remove the delaminating brick and examine the substrate beneath. At that time, we'll know if that front wall is structurally sound and it's just a matter of dealing with the delaminating brick, or if further work needs to be accomplished. So, you know, we have some provisions vis-a-vis alternates in the package that will allow us, once we understand the full extent, what further repairs need to be accomplished.
Thank you.
Good?
Good, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please. So I think to Paul's point, the included scope here really focuses on life safety and specific hazards to the individuals working within the facility and the public visiting the facility. And that is really where the committee and task force chose to kind of focus their efforts within that budget. And I want to be clear, it's not a full roof replacement. We are providing roof repairs to prevent further damage from occurring, because much of that letter references water damage, which, based on our site visit, is being sourced from above. So it's coming in through the roof and the parapet construction and further deteriorating that exterior wall and the interior space. Number one priority is stabilizing that front kind of facade, but then also trying to shore up that exterior building envelope so that it doesn't continue to get worse. I think Paul mentioned specifically the walkways and the spalling concrete and anything that the public could utilize, railings, anything that would be a specific hazard, again, a tripping hazard, or could be structurally or a safety concern. And that includes the public entry as well as the staff entry in the rear. There is a stair in the rear that was also our structural engineer drew attention to, that needed some work as well. In addition to those major components, and we obviously mentioned this last time, any required asbestos abatement would kind of go in hand with that as a requirement. But the asbestos abatement is limited just to the repair areas and the work required by the repairs. So we are not fully abating. We are not going to look for asbestos outside of that specific scope. So Jeff mentioned that interior stud brace wall that will penetrate the plaster ceiling, which is asbestos containing. So that is something that we will have to abate during construction in order to implement these repairs, or the contractor would be required to do so. So with that, Fuss & O'Neill did go out for another site visit, take additional sampling specifically focused on our scope. They were provided all of the previous investigation that occurred, as well as the previous abatement plan that was filed with the Department of Health a few years ago. So to Paul's point, you have a year to complete. The plan is valid for a year once it has been filed. And you have 6 months to start that work in order for that plan to remain intact. So that is in its draft form, and as soon as the project is out to bid, that could be filed in addition to all of their reports and specifications, which would be included in our bid documents.
Can I interject again? I'm sorry to keep, while I'm thinking of it. So in the Fuss & O'Neill report, it does state that there were nothing was detected. So could you explain that, please?
So I can pull up the full report if there's a specific area.
No, I'm just looking at, it didn't seem like in any of the areas, the fibrous, homogeneous cellulose and everything that they tested, even microscopically, it didn't seem like there was any asbestos detected, that's why I'd like clarification, please.
Absolutely. So a majority of the areas that they did test came back negative.
Good.
So the basement specifically, the lower level, we were concerned because that stud wall goes from
Yep.
basement to roof.
Yep.
We were concerned about the flooring and the ceiling in that area because the previous report, it was unclear to us whether or not that was asbestos containing. Those all came back negative.
Great.
What did come back positive was the plaster on the main level within the kind of the previous school classroom portion of the building. So kind of right at that front, kind of center of that front facade.
Okay.
And they did actually do some separate testing to ensure, is it just the plaster? Is it the joint compound? What components here are actually containing asbestos material? Because as the building has aged, that plaster has fallen onto the drop ceiling, which now contains asbestos, is testing positive, although it probably wasn't originally asbestos containing, but because those materials are now touching, you see those contents in their sampling. So basically what it states is that the plaster above the ceiling and the suspended ceiling itself are asbestos containing. And those are the items that are included in the scope of abatement.
Okay.
But most of that, if you look through that
Right.
litany of lists of samples they took, most of them came back
No,
negative.
that's
So
good
it wasn't
news, yeah.
a large cost driver
Right,
with a narrowed scope.
right.
But that initial report did indicate that if you start looking at all the exterior caulking and joints, and you will find additional asbestos-containing material, pipe insulation throughout the facility. We're just not impacting them with these repairs.
Okay, thank you very much.
So from a cost standpoint, Jeff alluded to the fact that we are packaging that exterior wall stabilization as our kind of base bid. In that specific estimate, that was a kind of a total cost of all of these included items. Since that point, we have discussed with the task force to break out each specific component as an alternate. So essentially, that exterior wall stabilization will be that base bid number, and then any of those additional scope items, including the roof repair, the concrete repair, any of those other items, will be other additional line item costs. So they could be included or excluded in order to control costs once those bids are received. And all of that is kind of working within that total project budget of $1 million.
Lots of information to go through, I'll tell you. There's a lot of stuff. So you're saying basically that if going out to RFP, get the bids in, we look at it, and then make a determination at that point, there is still some flexibility as to whether or not to continue with a full-blown project or to break out certain things that we may feel at this point aren't advantageous given the financial situation
Correct.
we're in? Okay.
Yeah, the market still remains a bit volatile.
Yeah.
So we always want to make sure that you have the ability to still manage the cost. We have a budget. We have an estimate that falls within that budget, but the instability in the market warns us to be a little bit careful. So if we can, if we have to eliminate the railing repair to stay in budget, that's still an option that's available. And likewise.
Bad night. Paul, can we do things concurrently? Like, can we do this while at the same time working, like this is getting in the works, this is getting going, the repairs as required by the trust, but at the same time, we're also working on the new building?
We should be,
Absolutely.
and they can be. We are. Tecton is working two parallel paths right now.
That's what I'm asking,
And we're
right.
at the point with immediate repairs. The next item will be about a new station and there are actions that you need to take going forward with that, but they can be going on concurrently.
Okay.
And they are going on concurrently.
I thought you were going to ask about the interior stuff,
No.
because I was
Yeah.
curious about that too. So everybody's sitting there shaking their head no. So if we're going to do any interior at all, replace the toilets, like, Claire had you weren't here last meeting, but what was the phrase you used, Claire? It was basic human needs or something?
No, that's what they called when I went to school.
It was important, and basically, we want to provide them with a building that they can function in right now, because it could be a year before we have them, 2 years, 3 years, right? Before we have them out. So how are we addressing that? Is that something we are going to do as a council? Because the task force is not tasked with that? They're only looking at these current items? Is that?
This will go back 2 years we've been working on this, over 2 years.
Okay,
This was in before
before any of us.
Ms. Alves got on the council.
Me
The
too.
question was put to the council that I was a part of, Claire was a part of. We had about $1 million. These are the issues to address. What do we want to do? The decision was made by the council at that time to go and look to see what it would cost to bring a full renovation of that building, to bring it completely up to code and meet the current standards of policing versus a brand-new building. So we went through that process, and we came back with a report that gave a comparable thing that it was almost the same price. So the thought process coming out of the council was to go forward and look at a new building. Now, it's been over 2 years now. We're still trying to solve the immediate concerns, which the trust got involved with in the interim, saying, We need to address this, but your budget hasn't changed. And I know that the trust's concern is the building needs to be brought up to code, but I don't think it's their primary concern. Their primary concern is safety in constructability of that building. They want the envelope secured of that building. They do understand that there are things in there, and they do understand that we have limited resources. They are aware of those issues. And so while it would be great to go in there and go through this building and put new floors in and put a new light in and do this and do that, the reality is the building needs to be replaced. We've gotten to that point already. One way or the other, everything that in there has to be replaced, whether it's torn down and a new building built, or and that's our option. We're not even looking at a renovation anymore. That's off the table. It's out of the picture because it's not feasible. It doesn't make sense. Financially and realistically, it doesn't make sense. So to go in there and do some of these things for the interim is really a waste of money. That's really what it comes down to. That's the decisions that we've looked at and said, spending money to do that doesn't make sense right now. It may make sense in November if you find out that the bond doesn't pass, then there's a whole different issue that's gonna come up. But we're not even looking at that right now because we can't look at that. It's an unknown. So if you tell the trust that we're fixing this and we're going out for a bond question, they're gonna sit back and wait. That's my opinion, based on the conversations that we've had with them and what. We're trying to meet their requirements and some of their needs so that they will continue to insure the building.
Okay.
And putting tile down in the dispatcher's office isn't something that's gonna say, oh, no, we're not gonna insure this building because of that.
Oh, no. I understand the significance of their concerns are liability to them. Right. I mean, that makes sense.
And that's what we're addressing right now.
But what I'm also concerned about is the safety and ability for the people in the police department to do their job in a place that at least, I mean, we've had the chief come up many times and tell us about things that are disturbing to hear, that we have this great group of individuals and they're not able to have anything that is the least comfortable to work in, so I'm concerned about that. That's all. I just want, be on the record for that.
I've been concerned about that since I was on the budget committee in 2010. It's a concern we had with Chief Reynolds. It's a concern that we've talked with the current chief about, and he's aware of it, and we're aware of it. And ultimately, our main goal is replace the building.
Mr. Redney, I'd like to add something. The fact that we're working right now, the trust, we're showing good faith, fixing these things that could cost if anybody got hurt. But at the same time, we're going forward with a new building.
We're trying to.
You will. Knowing the people on that, it'll be a piece of cake for you people. I believe it can be done, and I don't think any of those policemen think we don't appreciate what they do, because basic needs that will go with them as far as equipment and everything, that's a no-brainer. But that building, just think, my father graduated from there. That was a little school up, 1913. It was built to be really a basic first one, second neighborhood, like Union Village was, and this building was. It is not equipped to hold the technology, the wiring, everything else that's needed today. And I'm just sorry, from the get-go, we didn't attack it that way. We would have saved a lot of money.
So
Yes.
let me try to address your question based on my previous life, and that was lots and lots of construction and trying to tell my managers, don't be fixated on the construction. That's a long ways out. You still have to maintain the building.
Right.
Or you have to maintain the equipment while that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put the onus on the chief, but what the stuff that you're talking about, I would assume that would be the chief's capital budget. some of those items that you're talking about, if there's bad toilets, stuff like that. He can put them in his budget, and you all can approve it and make it, you know, healthy and sanitary and all the other terms. But yeah, it's just the way it is. People kind of get so fixated on the ultimate solution, they forget they still have to
Yeah,
operate.
right. That's true. Okay, is that the one you need?
So can I just ask what the difference is between this cost estimate and this one? I mean, because the numbers don't match up, so what is the difference between the two of these?
Oh, okay, so is one copy?
One is the project cost.
Okay, so one is from the estimator?
Right.
Yes, okay, so one is just the hard cost, so it's just the construction cost, and the summation sheet is a total project cost. They have those two, okay. So I'll pull those both up on the screen.
No, right? Where did you get that?
In my packet.
Really? We don't have it.
So this package, the package that looks like this,
Yeah.
that is from our estimator. So that is depicting the costs here. So that is the construction cost. So that, in theory, would be the cost received in response to that RFP from your general contractor as your bid number. This then includes additional project development costs required to complete the project and some contingency, because there is some unknown when we start to pull back some of that exterior facade, then we may find things that we were not expecting. So there is project development costs and contingency in this total project budget, which is this sheet that you have in front of you. So one document's number is incorporated into this total budget.
So one is like 40,000 less than the other, so are you saying the estimator is coming in lower than the project cost?
It was probably, it's an adjustment.
I think it's when it's run, right? Because one says as of February 2023. So I guess this one that's 40,000 higher, when was this run?
So this was run, so the numbers here that we receive from an estimator, first of all, we always look at them because it's a snapshot in time. So it was run in February of this year. It was escalated to an assumed midpoint of construction, which is Q3 of this year. So we took the core numbers included here, which is really more that base design line item, then incorporated his recommended percentages, but ensured that it was according to our current timeline. So I think the discrepancy is somewhat included in that escalation number, because it's according to our current schedule. And we do look through the entirety of that estimate to ensure that we're comfortable with his assumptions and what he was taking off of our drawings. So it is not uncommon to see slight variations on the total project budget based on this number. Jeff, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I'm just looking for that 40,000, so I can give a solid answer to that.
Per year, so
675.
it's very close. I'm flipping back and forth for you.
All right, so once again, we are the victim of percentages. The estimator did not include the $25,000 hazmat abatement. That's typically, we get that number from Fuss and O'Neill, our consultant that does the hazmat. So of your 40,000, 25,000 of it is the hazmat abatement line item. And then because the general conditions, bonds and insurance, overhead and profit are all percentages, they now take a percentage of that 25,000 as well. So that builds you up to the $40,000 discrepancy. So it's the fact that we took the estimator's number and added the hazmat impact to that.
Yeah, we just had a quick question. We were doing a little sidebar here. Is there, so the clerk of the works, is that something that we had agreed upon before? Or is that something new?
In this project,
Yes,
who's gonna oversee this project?
Right.
Tecton is gonna oversee it.
so that's.
If
the-
in fact you opt not to do a clerk of the works, there's $24,000 available in the budget.
Okay, that's a good point.
So if you're gonna oversee it, then why would we put that, I don't know, I guess.
So the inclusion of a clerk of the works, so, you know, in our contract, we come out to the site periodically. The advantage of having a clerk of the works is you get somebody there who's more regularly, usually that's on a daily basis. It may not be every day, all day, but it's specifically somebody that's just got daily oversight of the construction. It is, don't believe it is a requirement on a project of this size. It is something a lot of owners choose to do. But yeah, if you choose not to do that, that's $24,000 you can save out of the project.
Okay, and the only other quick question I had, the designer fees for that 80,000, is that that's what?
That was already approved,
Okay,
and most
'cause
of which has been expended.
All right,
Um,
right.
It does include our construction administration
Okay,
services
great.
as well. So
Thank
our
you.
oversight is included in that number. So again, just trying to give you a full
breakdown,
picture
right.
of the total cost of the design through construction
Okay,
of
thank
this
you.
scope.
What do you recommend as far as an overseer of the person overseeing what will be going on? Gentlemen, right here, you've worked on some big projects. Your expertise, please tell us. That's why we're enjoying you sitting there.
Well, I would recommend at this point in time, let's see where the bids come in, and let's identify who the contractors are. If you choose a good quality contractor, you won't need a clerk of the works.
So in accepting bids, we should consider that as well, because we may pay a little more with one contractor, but their reputation tells you, and you may see it on other jobs where people went that way with them because of that, that we may be coming out a little ahead.
Right, that's all part of the evaluation process.
And you do have an option in your back pocket right now. The town does have an owner's project manager contract in place with, I'm drawing a blank. It's Bob Gervasini. I'm just drawing a blank on who he works for, but they're out of Hartford as well. You guys approve payment of bills to him every now and then through the school department. But as by law, we have to have an owner's project manager on the job. The town owns him. We have a contract with them. So it may be something, if we get to that point that we need to do that, we go back and revisit his contract because he's already qualified. Those are the type of jobs you can't just hire on an RFP. They gotta be qualified. So we've already qualified him. We already have a contract with him. We can amend that contract if we need to, so that they could oversee this. So it's an option that's out there, and like David said, it depends on who you have doing the job, whether you need a project manager or not. But the opportunity is there for the town to cover it.
So another option. And after RFP, about how long will it take normally for RFPs to come back? Just a ballpark, just given the economy the way it is right now.
Few weeks. Typically, you want to advertise the project so that you get some attention and competitive bidding. And then typically the package is available for review and for submission of bids for a number of weeks, during which time we can receive questions and answer any requests for additional information. And then those bids are publicly opened. So about a month, thereabouts.
Altogether, yes. So I did notice there's a $10,000 line item for that, for bidding and expenses related to advertising. So they would go to whom? The inquiries and the actual RFP, would it go to you?
Would that fee go to us? No.
No, not the fee. The actual,
responses.
The questions would be
Questions.
directed to us, and we would
Okay.
respond accordingly. And those services are included in our designer fees during bidding. So as a part of our contract, we ensure that there's an understanding of those construction documents. We answer any, additional questions, and we ensure that that timeline is met and, aid the town in kind of that process, so those bids can be successfully received and then reviewed.
So-
That line item specifically is for any additional expenses. If
okay.
there's requests for printing, if there's a cost to host those documents anywhere, advertising costs. So it's really a line item to ensure that that is covered as a part of that bid, that bidding process is covered from the town's, on the town's behalf.
Okay. Thank you.
So in the construction field, is it getting to the point that contractors are now looking for work, or are they still, are we still looking pretty far out for open time? How is the contractor field now?
So I can give one very tangible example. We just received bids on a fire station in Connecticut a week or so ago. And from what we heard on the street, we expected actually to do very, very well on the bidding. And when we received the bids, in general, we did. Two trades that were notably still high were plumbing and the mechanical work. Not the electrical, but plumbing and mechanical. And we've been well aware of delays in receiving switchgear and equipment like that on the project, but it seems like at least in those two divisions, there's still high demand, and the contractors are busy, and they're also adjusting their numbers based upon lead times as well. So, we went through all the divisions of the bids, and those were the two that were high. Everything else fell right in line with estimates. So, I think it's improving. But we're still seeing anomalies out there.
But what about timeframes of contractors being ready to start a job? Is it still pretty far out that you would have to get in line to mark some time, or are contractors pretty much caught up now and they can start jobs pretty quickly?
I don't see a delay in getting the general contractor lined up. They are still adjusting for lead times in their schedules. We are still seeing, everybody's aware of the lead times for switchgear right now. Everybody's aware of some of the lead times for computer equipment that's necessary to make the building automation controls work. So the contractors are making adjustments for that, but we're not seeing major delays. In fact, on this very fire station, I was in the contractor's office the day before yesterday, and they actually, one of the things that we talked about was possibly optimizing the schedule, because they believe that considering their lead times, they may be able to improve on the overall schedule. That's good news, because for quite a while we've been hearing, we've been extending the contract time, and then still hearing from the contractors requests to extend it even further. Mm-hmm. So to hear them saying that they can optimize it is actually a good sign for the market in general.
Thank you.
Luckily, we're not looking at a switchgear or any mechanicals on this project right now.
Right.
On this part of the project.
And this will satisfy the interlocal trust. Did somebody say a 90-day? Did I hear 90 days?
When they gave us a letter back in
Originally?
February, it had a 30-day look ahead and a
Yeah.
90-day look ahead.
Okay.
And so
Okay, good.
We've been in contact, the town's been in contact
Yeah.
with him, and now he's looking for an update, so
Mhm.
the good news, I'm sure he'll be glad to hear that we're ready to go out for an RFP.
Mm.
So, that, you're good now, that's, as far as that agenda item, you ready for a motion?
Yes.
Can
Well,
I,
it's our recommendation, yes, that the town go forward with an RFP, that they authorize the finance director to put on an RFP. I don't know exactly where the two stand. I know that Tecton's been working with Mr. St. Ange and working on the front end of it. I believe they filled in a lot of the blanks. I haven't been in contact with them, so I can't speak for them, but I believe that everything is ready to go out to bid.
can I just ask one little other thing with the removal of the communications tower, which is listed in the Rhode Island Interlocal Trust, or securing it? I heard someone say securing it. Is this part of this as
Removal
well?
of the antenna, it
It
needs to
says-
be it needs to be
right.
resecured and retethered.
Okay, so
The chief
it-
had looked into that earlier, and he had some pricing from Motorola, but we've included it into this bid process.
Okay,
Yeah, I have a quote from Industrial Communication, $7,420.50.
And just to clarify,
Since it's over a certain amount, I need 3 bids, so I have to call 2 other general contractors. But as you can see, with all this work and all this construction, all the money that's gonna cost for all these different things, I just put it on hold until this is.
Yeah, well, you don't need 3 bids if it's included in on the project, correct?
correct. And just to clarify, we're talking about the antenna on the building, not the large communications tower
Not the big
behind
cell
the
tower.
building, the cell tower. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Oh,
We're
well,
just talking
I-
about the smaller
yeah,
tower
I'm just
on the
reading what
facility.
the administrator gave us
Yep.
from the, so it does say removal of the communications tower. That's why I was confused.
Right. The communications, the cell tower behind the facility is not being touched. It's
Okay.
just the antenna on the actual facility
Okay.
itself.
Thank you.
So now with the repair of the windows not being done, the supporting structure and window openings, now is this letting any moisture in or any of the water coming in through the windows? So like, I understand starting from the top, obviously and working down, you're gonna capture most of it from the roof, but is there also water infiltrating through the window openings?
We may find that there needs to be some new sealant applied around those window openings as part of the investigation. One of the things that we talked a great deal about with the structural engineer is, do we remove more of that exterior brick, in a preemptive effort? And the recommendation is no, because then you're in a situation where you have to actually rebuild the entire front facade. So yeah, we've got some provisions in there to deal with recaulking of the windows. Now, if the window systems themselves are allowing some leaks in there, that's not included. My own observations, although those windows are a little bit old and tired, that the bulk of the leaking is coming from above.
So is that where you said the caulking could have asbestos in it, or is that the caulking you were talking about, but that hasn't been tested, has it?
Yeah, our intent is not to remove it, so we would simply
You
add
just-
more
you
caulking
just add
where we
over
see
it,
openings, yeah.
And that would be fine?
Yep.
Yeah, we would just encapsulate it essentially. We also do have included around the entirety of the building, any substantial cracking through the brick, we are planning to at least caulk and try to contain or hold those larger cracks. And those are denoted throughout, not just on the front facade. So that is also included in this scope.
And not all cracks are the result of delamination. Some of them are just, they're cracks,
Yeah.
They
Sediment.
probably are related to the water or some movement in the building, but they don't face the same issue that the front facade is. So sealing them up is just a preventative measure so that nothing gets worse.
Does anything have to be done with that copper structure? I mean, it's also, you know.
It'll have to be removed and either removed and left off or removed and reinstalled. That's among the options we're looking at with the alternates.
Okay. So one thing that we discussed with the structural engineer is that most elements on that front facade, the precast, the windows, are all bearing on that exterior width of brick. So as we remove those items, you know, everything's gonna kind of come down with it. And the concern is if the damage is, we can't tell how far that goes into that multi-withe construction, is that it would require the rebuild. So that copper fascia and detail work would have to come off in order for us to just do that immediate investigation. Because that's where, really where the major concern is, right at the front where that
Right,
kind of
right,
copper
where it
detailing
is,
goes right
right,
across
yeah.
the brick.
Mhm. Thank you.
Madam President? May I make a motion? I'd like to make a motion to go out for an RFP for immediate repairs to the police station, stabilize and secure exterior structure of the building, authorize the finance director to go out for the RFP. Does that pretty much cover it, Paul?
Second that motion, Mr.
Just quick discussion, just one quick question. The assumed project start date is 6/1, so perfect world, you go out for the bidding and everything, you said it takes about 2 to 4 weeks. So is 6/1 still realistic? And the midpoint, it says 6 months from that 6/1, so by the end of this year, we'll be all wrapped up in a perfect setting, I guess?
Yeah, so the front end and the contractual obligations of those documents do include a expected, you know, start date, which is usually the authorization to proceed, and then a substantial completion date. So that's really what they'll be held to, which will be that
Okay.
6-month timeframe. And to Jeff's point, we'd commonly receive questions during bidding relative to schedule because they are contractually obligated to meet that deadline. So that would be included in the contract and would be wrapped up accordingly as soon as authorization was given to proceed with construction.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right.
Mr. Sinai, is there anything else that you need from us to put that plan together?
I plan to contact her tomorrow.
Next item is discussion by council vote or other action regarding updated presentation of the construction of a new police station from Tecton.
All right, based on all the discussions that we've had in these last few months with the joint meetings, in trying to get this down to a smaller footprint and possibly a one-story building, I think that we've reached a final solution, I guess you could call it, at the end of the line, maybe. As I told you guys last week when I gave you the update, we reduced it down to 14,850 square feet. And Tecton was working on a test fit, so we'll hear their report tonight, because I haven't heard any, well, I talked to Rebecca, but nobody else has heard it, so you'll hear it just like we will on how their progress is going as far as the new building goes.
So just a clarification, that the last time we were here, we had presented a reduced program that was unilateral, and that brought us down to 14,125 square feet. And when we walked away, our direction was to review this with the chief. And we did sit down, and we went through it, and the vast majority of the recommended reductions were accepted by the chief. But at the end of the day, we ended up at 14,850 square feet. Refresh my memory. What did we leave in? The court office?
The court came back in, which was 100 square feet, and there was a few other
And,
minor
yeah,
adjustments.
I believe it was the court office and the additional interview room at the booking area, if memory serves, and a couple other very minor things. But the overwhelming majority was accepted, so we ended up with a program area of 14,850 square feet. Zipping through, but I think the colors tell me what's actually removed.
The colors tell you what's changed from the previous, yeah.
So the other request that was made of us was to take a look and see whether a single story would fit on the site. So we did do that. And this is the site test fit that I put together based on that 14,850 square feet. I will say it is fitting on the site. There is a compromise One of the things that I realized right off the bat is this is a bigger single-story footprint than I had when I did the two-story options. And every time I tried to fit it, I was fighting against, there was just a little bit too much on the site with this footprint. So the one compromise that I did make is a drive-through Sallyport actually creates a lot more site area because it has a driveway in and a driveway out. That the vast majority of police stations that we do now are drive-through. This one has a drive-in back-out Sallyport. You can see it on the lower left of the screen. It comes in right off of Merrimack Street, so that you would drive into the bays and then have to back out rather than be able to drive straight through. According to the program area, everything else fits on this site. You can see I adjusted the public parking area. I'm sure from your perspective, having seen the other versions, it doesn't look vastly different. But trust me, it did adjust because I was actually, fitting everything a little bit more snugly in there. So you've got a driveway that comes in off of Smithfield Road. Can you point to that? There you go. And so it accesses the 2 rows of public parking out in front of the building. We get 38 spaces out there. If you come in and turn to the right, there's a security gate. You enter into a little lot with the outbuilding and access to the impound area. If you continue straight forward, you access a different gate and come into the secure area, the police parking, and we get all of the staff and cruiser parking back in that area, sort of wrapping around where that cell tower is. Staff entries would be from that enclosure, yes, on the back side of the building, where the main public entry would be where that bump out is up on the front of the building to the right. And then, of course, the Sallyport I already mentioned around the side. So this is a single-story plan that utilizes the site. You can see there is a dashed line indicating the existing building. There you go, pointing it out there. And I'm sitting just about 20 feet off of the existing building to the new construction. So there are a couple doorways on the back there. The contractor will be required as part of the scope of this work, should this go forward, to maintain appropriate access and egress to those locations. So they'll have to maintain a pathway so that you can get to those doors. There's one in particular that actually drops down where the ramp is down to the cell block that is probably the greatest impact. So 20 feet to me was the tightest viable dimension. I thought we could get the construction going and still have that access. Obviously in urban areas we can do a 0 lot line construction, but it's usually not with egress paths there.
Where's the cell block?
The cell block would be in the lower left-hand corner. So the Sallyport would be right at the where that little bump is, right there, and then the cell block would be up page of there, right in there.
And a quick question, might be for the chief. The in and out, instead of right through that, I'm sorry, thank you. The in and out, backing out, it doesn't affect accreditation? I've been out of it for a while now, so that won't?
No, I don't think it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any requirement for a drive-through Sallyport for accreditation standards.
Yeah, I don't think the building now is affecting credit.
We don't have anything, we don't have anything now, I mean, we're getting accredited, so.
Good point.
So I think what this exercise did prove is that a single story at that 14,850 square feet, inclusive of the outbuilding square footage. That's a total square footage between these 2 buildings. It is feasible, either as a single story or as a 2-story. And I know that the council has discussed in the past the cost ramifications of those 2 different types of solutions. And that is something that could be studied further down the road. But it is feasible at that size on this site.
Does this include the municipal court?
Yes, it does.
Oh, good.
It includes a reduced training room that also serves as the municipal court, but it started out much larger by looking at scheduling options. It's smaller than it was in the 21,000 square foot solution.
And one thing that the task force did discuss is what is the square footage change due to the inclusion of the court?
Mm-hmm.
And it is really just the small chambers for the judge, which is 100 square feet. And the task force also discusses, could that be shared workspace in the future to support social services or other types of programmatic, changes within the department, as it wouldn't be used full-time. So there was a discussion on, the ramifications of that decision, that the training room is included in the program regardless of the court being included in the program.
Okay.
So the large square footage component of that portion is there no matter whether or not the court is included, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
But there's, by putting the court, though, there's extra security measures that have to be taken, right? That are probably costly, no?
No extra from what we would normally do with the police department.
Okay.
Jeff? Obviously, this is the first time we've seen this plan. Is this one-story addition expandable in the future?
It could be pre-planned for vertical expansion. That's a little tricky because you have to figure out where your stairs and elevators would go. But horizontal as a single story, not unless you could remove some site need element. So, if you, reduce parking or consider the parcel, adjacent where I guess there's a walking track and a playground there. That sort of hems in the back portion.
Wow.
In my business, you never look at play fields. If somebody points to a site with a ball field on it, you say, no, that's not viable. But, the reality is other than that little bit of up in the upper right-hand corner, I've used pretty much the whole site here.
So 38 parking spots, is there an equation to get to that amount of spots that we have to have? Because, you look at what we have now, we have really nothing. So I'm just wondering, is there some sort of equation that gets us to 38 spots, or?
For the public side?
Yeah.
Basically, we're looking to accommodate the needs of the training/courtroom. If you had full occupancy in there, you would fill that lot up.
But that could be reduced, right? Because when you have court, you don't have everyone there at the same time. You have people coming in, going out. I don't know.
Yeah,
if you'd
there's
have
always
38 people
overlap
at
with
once.
flow in there, but,
Right.
again, when it's set up as a training room, with the tables and chairs, it has a lower capacity than when you set it up
Right.
vis-a-vis this with seating. So, just to see 40 chairs in there is very reasonable to expect. Will they all be occupied the entire time? Maybe not.
Can I ask a question? But the court, the 38 or the 40 chairs, it's also a training room. So you could have something else other than the court going on there, which could bring in 40 or more people, I guess. But my question is the costing for the single layer, single story, when will you have that costing?
At this point,
Or did we not?
this was not in my contract.
Gotcha.
The exercise of going through the program was not in my contract, but, out of goodwill and the hope that we can, actually help the community and the department have done this. So in order to go further, we would have to do a further development of this idea vis-a-vis floor plans and elevations so that we had enough material to send to a cost estimator and get an actual cost estimate on it. The trick is if you want to do an apples to apples comparison, single floor to 2 floors, you need to do a 2-story scheme and price that as well. That's a choice that lies entirely in your purview. I'm not looking to do, expand the scope of a study just because we want to answer that burning question. We could certainly just take the estimate we had from the previous facility, pare it down proportionally to square footage and see what the difference is.
Thank you.
So that track, is that where the broken line is? Is that right there, that square, that's the actual playground?
Track and playground, it remains untouched. Yep, it's in this area of this plan here.
You'll see there's a sort of diagonal line. Part of it is fence, and then part of it's just the extension of the line. That is the edge of that park area, if you will.
So like how many feet go between that back parking lot and that other corner? Yeah, right up in there, like how much?
Yeah, about 4 or 5,
Huh? 4 or 5 feet?
4 or 5 feet.
But it does not extend that far up on site. I think
Oh,
I'd
okay.
have to
does.
look at the
I think
aerial,
it
but
does.
does it go all the way?
I think it does, pretty close.
We'd have to look at exactly to what extent it goes up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, you know, I actually,
It's mostly right.
I was concerned about making sure that we had the room to get the fence in there and not have cruisers pull in and, you know, bump it. So, you know, I put my curb line and held about 4 feet off of it so that you wouldn't damage the fence every time a cruiser or a personal vehicle pulled in.
And can I ask the DPW director? Mr. Pendergast is Parks and Recs, I guess. Oh, take your time. I know the feeling. Is that area utilized, that park slash, I know for years there was talk about doing something there, but is it being utilized?
Yes. It's a brand-new
Little foot-
walking track.
And trike path? Oh, okay, all right.
And just
So,
so everybody knows, you have a sewer line that goes through that parcel.
whoops.
It was just there. The sewer line is actually closer to the police department parking lot. It's about maybe 10 feet off of that. It runs from Glen to Merrimack. That's a major sewer line for us, just to give you a heads up.
That's good
That's
to
always,
know.
yeah, it's always been mentioned that they could expand onto that lot, and so that would be an issue.
Okay, thank you. It's not up to date.
Unfortunately, Google Earth is not up to date. It shows grass there now, but that, it isn't. I think one of the other maps has it properly. I found it somewhere, I don't remember where.
So we won't know if it's worth doing a single story over a 2-story until we can see the cost and all that stuff. And it may be cheaper, but still it may even be wiser to go 2-story if it's you're looking at what you get for your money.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think oh, there's the track.
Which was once a tennis court.
I did not know that. Here's the sewer line. Okay.
Yeah, so that edge of pavement line is approximately that line that I was pointing out on my plan,
Yeah.
so.
So now if you go back to a 2-story, so now you're gonna be adding square footage back on because you have those stairwells and everything else, right?
Yeah,
So then it would just go back to the last diagram we had, pretty much, right?
it would be slightly smaller than that, yes. You know, again, if it were a bigger site, even if there wasn't an existing building on it, you know, my gut was when we're sitting here looking at just shy of 15,000 square feet, you know, my initial gut would generally be to do it as a single story. Even though conventional wisdom will tell you that it's cheaper to build 2 stories because you have one foundation that holds 2 floors and one roof that covers 2 floors. I know that police stations have this unique characteristic that there's a lot of stuff that wants to be on the ground floor. So you often end up with a unbalanced first and second floor to have optimal functional flow in it. And, you know, that sort of goes in the face of the advantage of doing a 2-story. You know, if this were 20,000 or 30,000 square, I'd do 2 stories any day of the week.
Yeah.
But at this scale, I'd rather do a single story because I think it's probably slightly more cost effective.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Good information, really. Appreciate it.
So I just have a question. So if we wanted to go down the single story we need to amend your contract essentially is what
I
I'm
would have to give
gathering,
you a
right?
fee proposal to do, obviously, the programming is done. It would be conceptual design and the cost of getting an estimator to put a number on it.
Gotcha.
And the site plan is done. It might change a little bit when I actually do the floor plan, but not much.
So now, if we were to go with something like this, so there would be like basically no parking at the facility until construction was done, right? Like what kind of, because there's not really gonna be any parking in the front because the existing building is there.
So you have a small parking lot right there where right there where the outbuilding is.
Yeah,
And then you have some on-street parking down at the bottom edge.
yeah,
Arguably, we could have the contractor do a temporary, throw gravel in that area and expand it to get more parking in there. But you will not have during the construction the same amount of parking that you have today. So there will be some alternate provision that'll have to be arranged. Whether that means the employees park off-site and you keep the cruisers on-site, that's a possibility. But that's something we'd have to work out as we go through the details.
Well, at least Merrimack's one of the widest roads I know in North Smithfield.
so for cruiser parking, would they go, where would the cruisers be parking now, like back into like where the proposed spots would be for the new station, police parking? Is that where they would park?
During construction, while the existing building is there, they would park out front where there's a lot out front, right where that outbuilding is shown,
Yeah,
right there. And then, like I said, we could take the area at the bottom of the site, get a temporary gravel lot in there and park some cars there as well. There is some on-street parking there now. We would just expand that so you could get another row of parking in there. I could, go back and take a look at some point and see what that actual number is. But, Chief, you don't happen to know what's available in that front lot, do you?
Right now,
Yeah,
Probably
it'd be about
8.
12 spots.
yeah, so 12 up front. Maybe we get, equal number, maybe a few more down where all the trees are. Yeah, you could park them on the front lawn.
I mean, when we built the middle school, we lost that whole parking lot that we used to park in, and we created a temporary parking lot in the back while we were under construction, waiting to build a new parking lot in front of the school, the high school. We built a temporary lot for the staff to park on. So it's not something that's not conceivable. Just, the cruisers aren't gonna be in the back anymore, they'd be in the front of the building.
And Chief, you've talked to someone about this, you feel comfortable about this, at least on the parking situation as we're
Once we get to
referring?
the construction phase of it, I'm sure we can figure something out.
Okay,
I mean, it's not even,
Right.
There's the park, there's temporary parking lots. We could talk with Woonsocket, there's a full lot of Barryfield across the street.
Yep.
okay.
You
Yeah.
know, Once it gets to that point, I mean, we can,
To minimize
officers in
your,
their personal vehicles can park along Merrimack, into the park.
okay. All right, good.
It's gonna be up to the
There'll be
construction general
options.
contractor on, bowling fields where they store material, gravel piles,
Right,
Yeah, I would expect that area that I designated as the cruiser and staff parking in the final site plan is gonna be the contractor's lay-down area where
Right.
he's gonna put his trailers, where he's gonna put his materials.
Right.
So I don't think that would be available to us at all.
So, can I just ask, so tonight, first of all, I want to say thank you for doing the single story, because I know I pushed at one of the meetings for a single story, so thank you. But I would like to, I don't want to obviously lose momentum, so if we need to do a contract amendment, are you guys looking for a motion from us to extend, to work, or to negotiate with
Want to continue.
Tecton to continue?
If you're interested in a single-story footprint at 14,850 square feet on this site, we need to amend the contract so we can continue to move forward.
I think the next step would be to request a proposal from me,
yes.
and then once you have that, then you can amend the contract.
Yeah, I was just looking
Find
for
that
the next
acceptable.
steps, yeah, okay.
you want to make a motion?
So, yeah, I was gonna say, I'd like to make a motion to request a proposal from Tecton, for a single-story building,
Costs.
and cost and site plans and
Yeah.
layout.
Site plans, floor plans, building elevations,
The whole works.
perspective, and, cost estimate.
I second that one.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes. Discussion by council vote or other action regarding a ballot question for the replacement of the existing police station.
I put this on the agenda just kind of for discussion, but just to kind of dovetail into this, just to keep the momentum moving forward. The potential date, I'm assuming, is going to be, or I would prefer it to be, when that special election is gonna be for CD1. I don't know the exact date of that, whether it's the end of October, beginning of November.
November.
I'm not sure
November
exactly
7th.
what date that they've chosen. I don't know if the clerk knows.
November 7th.
So we have a target date, so to speak.
Mhm.
The enabling legislation needs a resolution from you guys to forward to the General Assembly. Now, when you had Ellen Corno come in, bond counsel, she had suggested that any questions for that be there by April 1st. Monday is May 1st, so we're kind of behind the loop. I don't even know if you have language for a resolution yet done. Personally, I think that's something you should be investigating with the solicitor to get that language ready to go, and that with blanks filled into it, that we can fill in when we need to with a number and stuff like that. Obviously, you could talk with bond counsel to get the language that you need, but I think that those are things that, even without having all the finite information, if you have, no lack of a better term, the boilerplate for it, just waiting to fill in the numbers, that's important to have, so that when we do get to that point, when we get numbers and we look at it, we can make a decision and say, okay, and we can get it to the General Assembly and get a question, and get them to give the approval. The rest of that stuff kind of falls into play in August. There's 50 days, I believe, before a special election. You got to get the language out there, so we have time to get that, but it's really to get the enabling legislation from the General Assembly. That's really the important piece. We could get updated financials from PFM if we, once we get a better handle on the number. I think that we know kind of where we sit. We're in that $17, $18 million number. That's where it's sitting and where it's kind of shaking out. May come in a little lower, going with a single-story building, but we know we're in that range, so just so we can keep the momentum going. Personally, because we haven't really discussed it, because it's not kind of our task, but I know what the process involves. That we need to have those pieces in play, so that when we do make a decision in the next and this is going to kind of come out quick. It's going to be in 2, 3, 4 weeks. You're going to have to make a decision on where we're going with this.
So maybe, at least just to use the phrase you were using, boilerplate, maybe we should have the solicitor for like a May 15th meeting, at least just have a template that we can start discussing without, hopefully we can get more cost and stuff like that and we can fill it in, but at least just start that conversation, I think.
I still think we need to get, to kind of zero in on the final cost, and I thought we were kind of talking earlier that we were gonna have some public meetings so that we could show the designs to, we could have residents come in so they can see, kind of what's going on, and I just think we can't feasibly do that and be doing a special election. I mean, the general election is only gonna be a year from the special election, so I just don't know why it's just my thought, but I don't know why we have to rush to get to do the special election. I mean, we may not even have a big turnout for a special election, so, the next one would be a presidential. We know we're gonna have a big turnout, and then we would know that we've basically done our due diligence and haven't rushed into something, but either way, I think we need to start talking about scheduling some public meetings. Now, is Tecton, you said you do public meetings for us, so how many did you say?
I believe we had 4 in our prior contract, yeah.
So maybe we can start,
It's been a while, I have to go back and dust it off and read it.
do you, and I'm not rushing it, I'm just trying to, do you know, like, what kind of time frame we would be talking about on getting numbers for the single story? I mean, not rushing, I'm not asking.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the reality is we're looking at probably a 3-week turnaround on just the estimate.
Mhm.
So I would say that you plan for a month for the estimate and 5 weeks for the design, because, I'll actually come up with some designs earlier than that, but we have to run it by folks and make sure that we have consensus on it.
So you're talking like 8 weeks?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
How long have we been working on this? We're saying it's rushing it. I'll be dead by the time the first vote goes out. How long? Mrs. Wagner, you're wonderful on numbers. How long?
I mean, we've been talking about this for over 10
Couple
years,
years
but
now?
I think
2014.
we're at the point where we're determining, does a single story or a 2-story make sense? So prudently, I think we should still keep it moving forward, amend your contract. We can talk about the resolution and at least start talking about what that language looks like, and whether we do that now or we figure out a general election, but then we can still move forward with new costing and stuff like that. There's a way to keep them moving without slowing it down. I think we just need to kind of keep all options.
There's a couple things. As far as public presentations and whatnot, I kind of went over this the last meeting I was at. Before we can go and start having public presentations, we need to know what that solution is.
Right,
We don't know that.
that's right.
And so for Tecton to come in and say, here's 13 different plans that we've worked on, isn't how you do, it isn't what we should be doing. We need to know, this is what we're proposing, and this is what we're proposing. And single-story, 14,850 square foot building, $17.2 million, whatever the number is.
Mhm.
This is what we're proposing, here are the renderings, here's the site work, this is what we're proposing. That's when they come in and do their PR stuff.
That's why.
Right,
I'm
That
that's what she's
decision,
saying.
that
That's why I'm
decision is
asking how
made,
long.
is made by you folks.
Right,
Right.
but I
And she
needed to
knows
know
that.
how
Hmm.
long it would take to get this turned around, so we can start thinking about when we could potentially do these meetings, because we don't want to just throw it on someone a week before and say, okay, we're
Oh.
doing this Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. We
I
wanna make
understand, that's why I
sure
said,
that everyone has plenty of time, and
Right.
it's advertised in so many different ways, so that
Right.
no one can say, oh, I didn't know we were building a police station, because that's gonna happen, no matter
Oh,
how
I
much
know.
we advertise, no matter how many meetings we have, how many questions we answer, you're still gonna get, I didn't know that we were doing this. So we
But-
wanna make sure we have it covered, so that's why I'm asking what we think that, and I'm not rushing anyone, I'm just asking what we think the turnaround time would be, so then we can see it, and then we can kind of back into that and say, okay, so maybe in July, we're gonna be able to have public meetings, or just so we kind of know where we're going, so we can start maybe putting some feelers out there that, come July, we might potentially have what we want to put out there, just so we know that people, because now we're gonna go into summer, so people are on vacation, and, it's gonna be harder to get more people out, so that's all I'm asking, I just wanna know, and yes, we should know which direction we're gonna go in by then, but that's the reason
Trying
I'm
to get a
asking.
schedule.
Yeah.
If I could add to that, the purpose of the public meetings, the council has to decide which direction we want to go. The council's going to look at all the plans and decide, do we want to go for a single story, or do we want to go a 2-story? Once we decide on that, and once we go forward with this, and then we need the public hearings, and then we need Tecton to attend the public hearings to try to educate the public on whether or not to vote for what we already approved. The public hearings are not to get the input, is not to get them to just help us decide if we want to go with a 1-story or 2-story. The public hearings for to decide whether they want to do it at all.
Right,
So-
that's what she's saying.
Right, so
Yeah.
I don't think that we need to slow things down by having multiple public hearings and getting, it's the council's job to decide what we want to do, what we're going to present to the public. And then, once we do that, then the public will educate the public with public meetings to decide if we want to go forward, if they want to vote for it or not. But just to have public hearings, just to get more input, we've gotten the input, it's our job to decide, we decide, and then we go to the public and say, this is what we decided, are you for it or against it?
I don't think I was saying that. I want to get the public to make my decision. What I'm saying is we need to make sure they're educated in what we are
Before a vote.
presenting. That's what
But
I'm
we,
saying.
but we're not gonna start educating them in July. If the date is November 7th, you're gonna start educating them in September, in October. So we've got that time. The biggest hurdle is enabling legislation. That's the biggest hurdle that you need. You need that to go forward. You can't do it without it. And so you miss that whenever the General Assembly decides they're gonna end, the middle of June, the end of June. That's what's important. David, you had something to say?
Yeah, I just want to say, you don't want to push this off to 2024. Costs are continuing to go up. They've stabilized, but they're not coming down. They're only going to go up. And I fear if you push it off another year and a half, we're going to pay the price because costs are going to be escalating at that point in time.
Okay, so then we all agree, I think maybe you misunderstood. What we're trying to do is get a decision, first get a proposal, change the contract, get the information from Tecton, get back here, decide if that's the one we want, 1, 2, what's behind door number 1, door number 2, right? We decide that, then we set up a schedule based on the 4 that are already included in the contract of public meetings so that people know what we're talking about. This is the one we decided on. What do you think? We want you to vote for this. So if that's, it's an encouraging kind of thing, I think, to get people to vote, right? And to know what they're voting on and to know what the impact is for them on their tax rate and if it's okay with them. And like you said, Paul, it may or may not pass. But it's very important that we provide them with as much information as possible so when they go to the voting booth, they know what they're voting on. That's it.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add from a scheduling standpoint, and typically how those public presentations, and I think we had talked about this a little bit previously, it is common, or that we do see towns and cities plan for those, 2-3 months in advance of an ask, and they are typically scheduled out and on varying nights, varying days of the week, sometimes on weekends, to ensure that you can get maximum attendance. We can also leverage existing town events. So instead of hosting a specific public hearing or public presentation just for this project, we've shown up to well-attended events, had a table, been available for questions. So there's a lot of different approaches that we can take to public outreach, outside of and above and beyond just physical presentations, although those are a great platform for discussion and questions and to educate the community on what the ask includes. We've done, postings online, we've done brochures, we've done a lot of different types of outreach, again, to ensure that the ask isn't a surprise once it comes and that folks have the opportunity to educate themselves on the proposed solution. So I think keeping that schedule in mind, we could aid in that, and our marketing team could aid in kind of the general approach to those sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Paul, do you think the people that live in the town now realize that no police station has ever been built in Smithfield? And how many people say that? I know we had, I think from the historical committee, there was one in Slatersville, very, very small. Then it was underneath the second one was underneath the old town hall. And then we took over this. But to say that we actually built a fire station, because before that was volunteer, and anything that's up, they earned it. But with technology and everything they have today, the importance, this is where we started. But doesn't accommodate anymore. Let them realize.
And that is typically a part of those presentations, is
Wonderful.
an establishment of the need, an education on the existing conditions, what the current best practices are, what's the history of, that the fact that no station has been built or proposed. So ensuring that the public is fully educated on the overall process, the history of the task force and the department's growth is all typically a part of that presentation. It's not simply just the solution. It usually includes background in establishing why you're there in the first place.
Well, I just know, Chief, you've done a good job in the place you had to work in, but now we want to go beyond that. And if we don't, we're going to lose a lot of good men after a while. And we already have.
And women.
The one thing that I can add to this about the enabling legislation, based on, I mean, it was great when you had Ellen come in, Ellen Corno. I think she gave you a lot of information. I think she confirmed some of your questions that we're on the right path, that we're doing what we need to do on the task force, getting you the information that we're at that point and stuff. And the one thing that she did say was, always ask for more money. I'm not telling you 25 million, but make sure that you ask for the right amount of money, that don't try to just budget for what you need, so that if you have things that are unanticipated, you don't have to spend what you ask for. And the only reason I put that out there is because based on what we're getting for numbers, we may be able to round up to a number to get that General Assembly question, so we can at least get that out there. It doesn't mean that we're committed to spending it all. That's still ultimately your decision. But we can at least get to that point, that we can have that question ready to go. If you want, I can come back to the meeting Monday. Other than that, I won't be there because I don't think we'll have an update between now and Monday. But if you want me to, I can come back and we can discuss it with the solicitor and maybe bounce it back off at Ellen and find out what she thinks about it, maybe to get it moved forward.
And also, we're still waiting for financials, right? So I know you had given us a dollar amount that you felt at that point was something that would have been approximate.
What do you mean by you're waiting for your
We're waiting to
5-year forecast?
We're waiting for the forecast. We're waiting for Steve Massaroni, our financial person, to give us an idea of retirement of current bonds, so that, there may be some really good opportunity if something's retiring soon and this comes in and it's a kind of a wash, but we don't have that information yet.
Oh, I
So
thought you
it's-
had that, because I remember sitting down with the
Yeah.
administrator, and he showed me that he did have that report from PFM.
Okay,
So-
so
so-
we don't have that information.
So maybe next steps is, we have David Kraft, just the boilerplate language for us to start talking about, middle of May. And then maybe Tony can just get us an updated list, or make sure that we all have access to that list of bonds and when they're retiring, and we can at least start talking at that meeting. Yeah, that one. You could just share that with the council at some point.
No, we
No.
don't need it now. We'll need it to make an informed decision, though. Okay, are you looking then for a motion?
Do we need a
For-
motion?
You don't need a motion for
I don't
the
think so, no.
No,
resolution?
I don't think so. I think,
I'll pray for all of you.
Discussion by council vote or other action on scheduling of next meeting. Is this the next joint meeting that we're looking for, or?
Well, I always put that on my agendas,
Oh.
just because we try to schedule our next meeting, because when we deal with the professionals, we need to make sure that they're available. We just can't pick a date and say, hey, we're meeting this date. I don't think we're ready yet
No,
for
we can
next
wait.
joint meeting.
Okay.
When I come to another council meeting, I'll have a date probably that we can meet.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming
Thank
again.
you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And again.
And then we had that item to go into
Executive session.
executive session. You guys don't have to stay for that.
Do you want to close your meeting then, Paul?
Huh?
you
Well,
wanna
we have to
clo-
keep it open because it's
Oh.
on our agenda as
Oh,
well.
it's yours,
Yeah.
okay.
The executive session is at our request.
Oh, I didn't know that, okay.
We'll just wait a few minutes and
Okay.
Tecton will. Thank you,
I
Chief.
thought you meant just now about this. and I- Okay. Yeah. So-
Can you send me that PowerPoint?
Yeah, I was kind of like surprised how that just got thrown, like, there you go. Oh. Do I, should I make a motion to go in executive? All right.
Thank you.
Drive safely.
So, I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session related to RIGL 42465A2 sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, one, potential litigation.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Okay, we have to go.